Deal or no deal? Well, Judge Claudia Wilkins said no deal to the $2.8 billion settlement over 10 years for NC2A players. There's no question that the judge is really concerned about the fairness of the deal. And that's the way it goes. It's going to cover athletes from 2016 forward. So here's what she is pleased with. 22% of the bona fide revenues is what's going to the players. It's going to mean each school is allocated $20.5 million in that revenue. And what is the revenue? Media rights, ticket sales, and sponsorship. But there's one thing that was raised as an objection to this section, and that is college football playoffs are in a separate organization with separate revenues. I believe that should be put up under the bona fide revenues. Why leave it out? It still concerns the college professional athletes. So that's something that she has to ponder in sending this whole deal back to be reworked by both sides, the NC2A Power 4 side versus the player side. So that is what's happening under bona fide revenues. Now, the hard NEAL cap, as I've talked about over and over and over on my podcast, $135,000 going to Power 4, Power 5 players, men's basketball and football, and $35,000 to women's basketball. Well, she seems to be satisfied with that, but there were some objections to that as well. There are some athletes, past athletes, that said that their NEAL deals were much higher than what this deal is willing to assign them. So in other words, they want more than $135,000 or whatever allocation that they have. The judge basically stated she'll look at it. So if the hard NEAL cap passes and it's settled on, then you have no need for the NEAL Booster Collective. I believe in kill the NEAL. I will say it again. Kill the NEAL Booster Collective. It has no place in college football. It's just a pay-for-play system and an inducement to get players to come to your campus and people cheating to win a national championship. That's all it was. These are under-the-table payments that used to be, that are now have been legalized. Well, you need to kill it because it's going to circumvent the hard cap. And we don't want to do that. And what is the hard cap? It's like I said, $135,000 and $35,000 is the hard NEAL cap. So when you look at the Booster Collective, it just doesn't work in college football. Take the University of Tennessee. They had a star quarterback this past weekend to renege on a $2.4 million deal. He walked in and he wanted more. So he didn't come to spring practice. He walked out and says he's going in the portal if they don't raise the money. Well, the University of Tennessee said bye-bye. But guess what that did? Because you have these private collectives interfering with the football operations at the university, you just blew a big deal. They were dependent upon him to be this big-time superstar quarterback. And it just didn't happen. Now they're stuck with the players that they really didn't train in the spring. So they're putting all their hopes on somebody that they can get out of the portal to play for them this fall. It's not a good system. The NEAL Booster Collectives have got to go from college football. It's bad. It's trying to run the coaches. It's trying to run the ADs. If they're ever going to be in it, they can allocate money, and it should be allocated across all the players. Just quit hunting superstars. But right now, for me, that doesn't even satisfy me. Kill the NEAL Booster Collective. Get rid of it. And as far as the roster limits, the judge was not satisfied with that. You have the NC2A lawyers on both sides that are the attorneys that are representing the players, and then you got them representing the NC2A and the Power 4 conferences. These people are going to make $775 million in fees over 10 years. So is this about the game and the players, or is it about the Power 4, Power 5 conferences making money and the NC2A still being cheap toward the players? Well, with the roster limits, they set it at 105. The judge is not satisfied because that's going to put too much hardship on the players that were currently on the roster. So it makes sense to me, if you have an average, and this is per court records, 128 on a football team, and that was your scholarship limit, why not have a roster size in the first year of 128 players? It sounds right to me. And why are they pinching pennies when all these lawyers are making all the money? Who's taking care of the interest of the players? I don't know what's going on with that, and why the student athlete attorneys are not pushing for a bigger roster. 105 was never realistic under the deal. It's unfair. It's not giving student athletes the chance, number one, to make the team. Number two, they had made the roster. So why aren't they grandfathered in, or you phase it in? But it should be 128 roster limit in the first year. That's just me being fair to the players. Now, you have another group that came forward that we're talking about, the smaller schools that are getting ripped off. You see it every day. All of the Power 4 schools are now rating the HBCUs in the Group of 5 conference. They're rating their players, depleting them, and they have to go and get other players, making them a training ground. Well, what they want is, if they lose players to the Power 4, Power 5 conference, they want a buyout for each player that you sign. In other words, the Power 4 should be funneling money back to the HBCUs and the Group of 5 roster or conference. That's what it should be. But that's not in the agreement right now, but it was raised as an objection, which is important. They raised that, and it should be a part of this settlement. And then you have player management. Well, you know my stance on that. Universities are not built to handle compliance issues. And as soon as we can get a union and a collective bargaining agreement, we'll be better off for college sports. And that 22% revenue share is going to go up, believe me. And we're talking about 1099s, W-2s. The players don't know anything about that. And the universities cannot protect all the players from the compliance mess that's about to happen. So that's going to have to be tightened up, and it's going to be a wonder who is going to be making money off these athletes in the new economy. Who is the universities going to let in to try to help these players? Is it going to be their buddies and cronies of accounting firms that they know? Who's going to make that money? It's going to be a lot of money in the streets here. So player management is important, especially if you're not going to have withholding of taxes from the income that they're paid. So they still owe the IRS. And then what are the universities doing during all of this? They're headed up to Congress trying to get an antitrust exemption because they don't want any future lawsuits. Well, let me tell you something. They need to buckle down and get a good agreement here and quit trying to dodge paying college athletes their fair share, and quit going to Congress trying to have them to solve what the NC2A has been doing for years, the problems they didn't solve, ripping off athletes for the past 50 years. But they're only being made to pay from 2016 forward. Have you figured that one out? What happens on that? And that's the real deal about no deal. Claudia Wilkins said, no deal, no deal, no deal. That's what it's all about. Go back and rework those numbers, because there needs to be a fair deal put on the table, and I'm disappointed in the attorneys that are representing the athletes. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that a 105-man roster is not what it's supposed to be about, especially when the average roster is 128. And then you're going to have Title IX issues later too, and discrepancies. But that's where it's at. But the frank for the day is going to be the University of Tennessee basically got duped on a $2.4 million deal. Kill the Neil. And I said it. Kill the Neil Booster Collective. Get the private individuals out of the game. And yes, you can repost what I'm saying. You can go back and look at my other videos talking about the settlement agreement, the proposal. But right now, we got 2 more weeks to go before we may get a final settlement. This is Christopher I. Franklin at Be Frank for Real. One minority voice, one view. It's all about the Benjamins. It's not about the game. Everybody's getting paid. The lawyers are getting the lion's share of the payment, and they still can't come up with an agreement that satisfies everybody. But a lot of those guys are trying to get these private Neil deals, and they're not private. They need arm's length negotiations, period. Get the private Neil boosters out of this. The player can go out and get a deal, a local deal. He can get Nike. He can get sneaker deals, watch deals, whatever he wants on the open market. But don't have an artificial, bogus system that's built on winning championships on cheating. And as long as the private Booster Neil Collective is around, that's all you've got is cheaters winning. See you later. Go Mountaineers!